Okay, 6 minutes passed. Hey, there you are. Dimko, I can only see you're downwards. You're cutting your brain off. We need your brain for this event, please.
Just for me, just chopped off.
Chopping off your head. Don't do that.
Sorry out.
Okay, then. Well, I think it's time to start.
And for some reason.
Okay, I can hear you well. I can see you well. Can everybody hear me and see me well, I suppose? Thank you so much. And Dimko and I, we're going to have a very interesting session. This is our first dual session, if you may, meaning we're having two panelists presenting during this Portainerd event. And the idea is to show both worlds of possibilities in Portainer from a admin or SRE or a platform engineer perspective and a DevOps perspective. So I will supposedly set up the perfect environment for Dimko, and he's gonna access this environment via Portainer and do his magic. And then we're gonna see some challenges and some issues. And then that's where the fun is gonna start, where Dimko is gonna request this or that, and I'm gonna dynamically show how easy and how fast this can be done. So he can become a superhero in his dev world, and I can become a superhero in my platform engineering world. So let's stop the yada yada, and let's start presenting this cool thing. Right, so here I have a screen with my Portainer instance open. Suppose everybody can see this. Okay, so this is a Portainer instance running on Kubernetes, right? Because we're going to do this demo specifically on Kubernetes cluster. Well, it's not really a cluster, it's just one node. It's funny because I have a hard time saying cluster for something that only has one node. But anyway, it's a one node cluster running on AWS. Let's hope AWS behaves today and they don't crash. And so I'm going to set up this. Oh, one thing I need to set up, and then I almost forgot, guys. Just hold on. I need to enable the metrics. Yeah, metrics.
Yes, we're gonna need that today, definitely.
Yeah, and by the way, this is something we usually suggest. I'm using micro K8s as my driver here for my Kubernetes distro, but I mean, regardless, if you're using K3s, just if you're using pure, the roots Kubernetes, whatever you're using, it's interesting to enable the micro K8 server. Because then you can have access to statistics and even do auto. Without that, it's hard. You cannot do auto scaling. Okay, so I've just activated the micro K, the metric server. Let's see if it's available already for. Not yet. It takes some time because it's probably pulling the image. So let's give it some time before we continue. But I'm going to do the following while we're just waiting for the metric server to be available. I'm going to show a little bit of the setup here because this is important. I'm the God mode super admin of this instance, and Dimko is going to be a standard user. So for instance, I don't want Dimko to see the default namespace because let's say he mistakenly, and it can happen, deploys something on the default namespace. We can hit into trouble, especially because the image he prepared is a little bit of a beast. It's going to consume a lot of our resources. So I'm going to limit the default namespace because the default namespace, by the way, is a namespace that you cannot set any type of constraints or guardrails. So that's why he's not going to be able to see it. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm not going to allow resource overcommit, which comes by default on Kubernetes. I'm going to reserve at least 10% of my cluster resources specifically to the cluster. So any type of resource I try to manage now, after I click on save here via Portainer, you'll have the total amount of resources minus 10%. Okay, you'll see this in a minute. Mm-hmm. Right, and let's see if the metric server is up. Okay, so our cluster is configured. We're not going to play around with load balancers or ingress controllers in this case because it won't be the focus of this demonstration. And okay, enable change window. This is, let's say, a way to, on a periodical basis, allow changes on your deployments. This is not, again, a focus of this demonstration. We're not going to use this now. On our probably in some other episode of Portainer, we'll show what this means and how it works. Okay, my cluster is nicely configured. And now Dimko is going to call me, say, hey, Adolfo, I need this, this, and that. Okay, Dimko, go ahead. What do you need, dude?
So I think I need a namespace. Do you already
Okay.
have me as a user here?
Yes, I do. So
That's
you're
awesome.
going to use Kubernetes, right?
Yes, true.
Okay, so I'm going to set you up here. First thing I need to do is allow you access to this environment. You're just a user in Portainer, but you're not a user in the.
Yes, I don't have that environment on my side. So
Okay, so I'm going to set you up as a standard user. I suppose that's good. That's what you need. And if you log out and log in back, you should be able to see your environment.
I just refreshed and it's up here already.
Cool.
So
Nice. And now you need a namespace so you can set up your
yeah.
image. Okay, so I understand that Dimko set up an image that he needs to test on Kubernetes. I'm just going to call this Dimko 0, his first namespace. But you know, we have, let's see, 32 gigabytes minus 10%. This is why you see only 29,876. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to limit this to, I don't know, 1 gig. It should be more than enough. I have 7.2. I do have 8 CPUs or threads. As you can see, because it took off 10%, that is reserved via Portainer, I only see 7.2. I'm going to give Dimko, I'm going to be nice, generous, and give him 1 CPU. That should be enough, right, Dimko?
No, it won't. But
I don't care. That's what you're going to have, dude. I don't care. That's, yeah.
What we need to do is limit me in terms of the resources, because we have other people probably trying to work out this cluster, and we don't want my crazy images to bite their
blow up our cluster, right?
Indeed, yeah.
Exactly. So there's Peter, there's John, there's Neil, there's Anthony, there's tons of people using this, wanting to use this Kubernetes cluster. So I can't give Dimko everything, unfortunately.
No,
I'm usually a generous person, but you know, I'm forced to. I'll let him play around with storage. I'm not gonna limit his storage usage, because let's say I have tons of storage in this Kubernetes cluster for now. So, and I know he needs a lot of storage to deploy his image. So okay, I created this namespace.
Yeah.
And now I'm gonna enable Dimko to use this namespace. And he should be set. Dimko, can you see the namespace now, or should you might need to log off and log out?
And I can see that, and I didn't even need to log out.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to stop sharing, and now I'm good. I did my part, guys. Look, as an admin, this is all I needed to do, right? This is how simple, how easy. No code, nothing. I set up a namespace for a user. I gave him all the resources that I think he needs. And he's just now it's a show. Now he's going to show you guys his experience as a standard user on this Kubernetes cluster via Portainer. So, Dimko,
enable me to share. I think you need to.
I think you can make a co-host.
Oh no, it says no, I can't.
What about now?
And now I can.
Okay, cool. Dimko, it's your show now.
Let me know once you can see that screen.
I can.
Okay, cool.
Hope you guys can. In the meantime, if you have any questions, I'll be here on the chat to Thompson's. Dimko, you might want to your resolution is to add. That's perfect. Thank you.
And this should be better.
That's
Alrighty. Cool.
Okay, so do me a favor. Log out and log in, and show them your log in as a standard user.
Yeah.
Because they saw me as admin, right? Okay.
Yeah, indeed. So I'm just logging in here as myself. And what I get presented here is that only cluster that I have the access to, which Adolfo configured for me. And once I click on that, I'd be able to see all of its resources that are available. And for now, there is only one namespace available to me called Dimko 0, just as we seen on Adolfo's screen. And I'm able to see that as a normal user of that namespace, I can have 1000, just 1 gig of RAM and one CPU, one thread. So I think that's pretty much it. I don't see any of the events that happen to that namespace, but we'll see them coming up shortly. So what would be the purpose of that exercise or that demo today is to show that as a developer, being able to self-service your environment is the most effective, is just crucial, is the best approach we think to develop software. So I don't need to bother Adolfo anyhow, and most of the things I can do on my own without having to fight that enormous complexity which comes with running the kube cluster and operating that, doing all of the CLI commands, applying Kubernetes manifests, etc., etc., etc. So, so far, I love what Adolfo has set up for me, and I'd be able to first deploy my application, which I coded a while ago. So what this application does is, if we have a look at that application, it's a very basic .NET app, which does steady CPU spike, and it step by step increases the RAM, and it will also throw some logs for us to see. So let's first start with adding the application from the form, as it is the easiest way for us to deploy that. So let's give it a name, Dimko from form. And let's grab the image from the our custom registry. And it would be this guy. Super CPU intense. I already pushed that to the registry. Perhaps you can also see that here, saying that I've did the Docker build under that tag, and I've been able to successfully push that. In the real world, it's most likely would be you're just doing the commit to a Git repo and it builds the image for you. But in this, a bit of the ad hoc, just for the sake of simplicity, is just like that, building on my local machine. And I'm presented here with what I can configure within that application, but the most interesting part for me is that I am able to manipulate the quota for memory and CPU within my application. So what Adolfo configured is the quota for the namespace, and I can have multiple applications running in the namespace. And now I'll just set my application. Let's not just set, it has 300 megabytes available for that, and 0.3 CPU usage.
It's important to mention also, Dimko, that anything that you deploy on that same namespace, additional to this, any new application, is going to have the difference of what you just reserved here for this application. So you're taking away from other applications on that given namespace, the same way I did for your namespace. So this is cascading the way to make resources available within Portainer.
Exactly. So I'll leave some space for other applications that we might want to deploy, or for other replicas of that application. Let's just hit that deploy button, and meanwhile it's deploying. Let's go and see what is happening in the namespaces. And it seems that it should be able to change and reflag that deployment. So what I see here is that there is an application running in my namespace, Dimko from form, and it has CPU reservation 0.3 and 300 megabytes of RAM. And it is also reflected here. So you can see that kind of a progress bar here. So which is nice. It gives me a nice visualization of that. And now what I see is that application. It says it's deployed and 1 of 1. Let's see the events of that. So successfully assigned that to some node, everything, just operations as usual. And what do we have here is first, the logs. It says hello Portainer, and this is the very first version of the application that I had. So that's nice that I can have a look at the logs. And I'd be very interested to have a look at the stats, because stats are exactly that what we're gonna test today with our sample. So we have the refresh rate of 30 seconds, and it would be displaying the CPU here. So this is the most basic app that we can come up with. And let's just wait for the graph to update, and we'd be able to, yes, it kind of stays the same, right? So let's go on and edit that application and use a bit of the updated version of that. So let's use the same application, but version 0.2. And let's just keep our quotas the same and update that. Cool.
Check the events, Dimko, to see if it's going to pull the new version. It should, though.
I think it should.
Stopping the, yeah, it's stopping. So you can, there's something interesting on the table settings on the upper right corner of Portainer. Whenever you see table settings, you can set a refresh. For
Yes,
instance,
indeed.
in this case, yeah, 10 seconds, for instance. And then
Let's
you
do
can
that.
just close it. And it shows, it's nice to have that. We try not to put too much burden on the application by not leaving it on real time. Otherwise, you really, oh, you see, oh, it pulled the new image. Cool.
Yes,
there you go.
indeed. Yes, and it created
And
a
it
new
started the container. Okay, cool.
replaced the old one, or it's trying to replace that now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
should be just great. So no help from Adolfo required. It's version 0.2. And let's have a look at the logs here. And it's asking, will I crash? I don't know if it will, but let's see. And in determining whether it's gonna crash, these stats are going to help us massively, I bet. So it's still that same application.
Yeah, and guys, the 30 seconds limitation is not Portainer, okay? It's the Kubernetes API. So we wish we could, do the faster refresh rate, but unfortunately, not ideal, but it's what we get, right? Okay, there you go.
Here it stays the same. So I'm pretty happy with that application. And what I'm gonna do is I'll add the application from the manifest, right? I'll add the name Dimko from Git. And I have another version of that application, and I want to display that as well. This is the repo on my GitHub, which contains the CPU YAML file. Let me just quickly go and see that. So this is the Git repo, and this is the CPU YAML, which basically is the deployment of the application.
Yeah, so this is another method that is available for users to deploy applications, right? A more advanced method.
Yes, and more preferred, I'd say.
Yeah,
so that is, we'll get in a minute to all of the advantages of that. So let's just have a look at what we have here. As we'll turn off the authentication and we'll enable the automatic updates. So automatic updates is our take on delivering the application from YAML on your Git repo to your Kubernetes deployment inside your cluster. So what it does is that any changes that you do within Git repo are getting propagated to the Kubernetes cluster. And therefore you can manage that solely in the Git repo, like change the version of the image or anything like that. And it will, so you won't be required or forced to run any of the commands or do the manual changes in Portainer. Instead, as a developer, you work with the instruments that you are best familiar with. And in our case, it's Git. So let's wait for it to deploy. And let's also enable the auto refresh here. It will get there in a second. It also has all of the information from my YAML. So it has the name of the deployment, all of that will get exactly as I specify here, will get into the Kubernetes cluster.
One thing I didn't mention is that as an admin, I see everything that Dimko is doing on my instance. So I see he's deploying a new application. I can access, all the events on that application. Oh, that's obviously because I'm in God mode, right? But it's interesting also because in any moment that Dimko might need help or assistance, I have full view of everything that he's doing, and I can intervene if necessary.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So for some reason, my application isn't deploying. I'm not sure where I should look at. So let me just go back to the namespaces and see what's going on here. So what we see is CPU deployment, Dimko from Git. It kind of picked up the application in the namespace. And what do we see now is that it actually uses all of the CPU here and uses some of the memory, but there are some events and warnings coming up here. So which is kind of interesting. Let's see. Error creating pods, CPU is forbidden. So all that our Git-based deployment is forbidden because we are failing the quota. We must specify limits, CPU and memory and requests and yeah, that kind of stuff. And without that, it will not enable us to actually find a way to deploy the application within our cluster. So that leads me to changing that manifest. So I'll Google that real quick, or maybe Adolfo can help me out with the limits, etc. On how I can. Ooh.
Oh, dude, you're the developer. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Let me check. Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I'm kidding. I actually I need to check it up also. Initially, you should be able to, maybe because you have limitations on your namespace, that because you're using pretty much everything of the CPU, you cannot deploy anything else, right?
So let me quickly put that within here. So we will be right under the image. And now all of the formatting play gets in. And this should do the trick. And here we'd be able to specify this and this. I think that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Should do the trick. Let's give it a go. Yes, indeed. Let's commit that. Updating the CPU YAML. And as we updated, our deployment will pick it up. And
it worked.
I think it's already dead, right?
Yeah, it already picked the changes on your Git YAML manifest, and it deployed it accordingly. Well done. How cool.
Yes. Oh yeah, and it's deployed. So what I first seen is that it was able to pick up the resource reservations per instance, which is quite handy. And now what it does, it's running the application. So let's again have a look at the logs. So as we see, or as we recall from this file, it's the very first version of my application which doesn't drain any of the resources or anything like that. And we should be pretty much the same level. But let's do this. So I've coded a bit of the updated version of that application as 0.4, and let's deploy that. And when I say let's deploy that, let's just commit our changes to our Git repo, and Portainer will automatically pick up these changes. And also it's quite handy because we can hit that redeploy button. We can force the redeployment. If we don't want to wait for another minute, we can force the redeployment. So let's just pretty much do that. And
So
it
this
says,
is really cool because you see the GitOps functionality or feature that we have now with Portainer enables Dimko to concentrate basically on developing the application, and
indeed,
everything in terms of really deployment and infrastructure is done, right, is automated. So that's also
yes,
very cool.
indeed. So let's wait for the changes to appear here. Oops. Perhaps it will get updated in a second. Meanwhile, we can also have a look at what we have when we try to edit this application. So it actually says us that this application was deployed from the specified Git repo. And it tells us if you want to update the application, you have to update the YAML in that repo, so which we just did, which is nice. And it has all of the automatic updates. So let's also force the redeployment and save the settings.
And once you do that, it says pull and update application. That is also very cool on that option.
So I think it will get updated in a sec. Or maybe
we always have to consider, the image policy here, right? If it's not set to always on your YAML file, it won't necessarily pull the new version. So, we already see quota issues again.
Yes, indeed. So what we have here is perhaps what is happening now. Let's just go back to the namespace and see. So we have 0.8 of one CPU used, so 80%. And what we're trying to do is redeploy our application, and redeploying our application requires what? It requires old version to still be alive and new version to come up, and then we kill the old version, which leads us that at the same time we would have two working versions of our application that we just tried to deploy through Git. So can you, Adolfo, increase the quota for me?
Yeah, so this is what usually it's called the OOM, right? OOM, or out of memory or out of resources, if you may. In this case, it's out of CPU, right? So it does happen, and the thing about Portainer is that very quickly the developer has an idea what's going on, and he can request the Portainer admin to increase the resources for him. It's at 80%. Yeah, it's at 80%. He needs. I'll just double it. Maybe doubling his amount of resources.
Yeah, maybe it will do the trick.
Okay, so I'm gonna start sharing if I may.
Yes, let's go. Let's do that.
Okay, cool. And you'll see how easy, how amazingly.
I just put the message that I see in my Portainer instance into the chat. So it's pretty straightforward that we are trying to create a new pod, and we don't have enough of available resources for us to actually get that pod running.
Okay, I'm convinced. Let's check this out. As an admin, I can go to the namespace. Wow, really? This guy's in trouble. He does not have any room. I see exactly the same things he's seeing. It's not that I
Yeah.
believe he's lying. I just want to make sure that I can set properly, that I can see also what he's seeing, and yeah, he needs more space. Okay, let's give him more space. He's a nice guy. I like him. Haha. Space Dimko. I'll give you double. Okay.
Put me on
And I give you an
curiosity.
extra CPU, not unlimited. I can't. See,
Indeed, indeed.
this is another thing that's really cool. Once I start playing around with the
Mhm.
ruler here, I can see when things start getting better for him. And let's say if it hits green, okay,
Might do
1.6.
the trick, yeah.
That might do the trick. Okay, let's be a little bit more generous, and let's give him 2. Come
All right, I'll be like a beer, right? After that.
on. Yeah, definitely. You will owe me a beer.
All
There you
right,
go.
cool.
Set up. Let's see how his.
Let
I like
me.
to see here, um, in real time also, what's happening with his redeployment, and if Dimko needs help, and he can ask me to redeploy this for him if it's the case, right?
Mhm.
So let's say this is something that crashes, and a very possible scenario. Hey, Adolfo, can you help me? Can you increase this for me and redeploy it? Because I have a meeting or I have to go out, or it's just I've ended my shift or something. Can you give me a hand? I can try. So it's not hard. I can go here into applications, CPU deployment. Oh, and I don't need to do anything because once we've increased the resources, look at that.
Mhm.
Doom. It's
Yes, and it
redeployed.
works now. And it has updated the version, which is quite handy.
Exactly.
Can
Let's
you,
see.
I've been struggling with that application. Can you try to monitor that for me for a sec on the stats, on the logs of that?
Sure.
Because
Sure.
I think I'm getting lost with that.
Now it's still using .1, huh?
Is it?
It seems to be. Oh, is it because it's probably transitioning. That's why I couldn't check the stats.
Indeed, it could be.
There you go. Now I went to zero
Yeah.
four.
Yeah.
Well
Okay,
done.
cool. All
Oh,
right.
wait, hold on. I have to refresh this because it's getting the pre. It's still retrieving the metrics for this application. We have to give it some time. And this is a Kubernetes API, right, guys? It's not necessarily a Portainer. Um, let's give it some time. Stats.
Uh,
Oh, it's putting the wrong the pod name. So let's give it some time. Maybe Dimko, you
yeah.
can see it
Maybe
from
I
your
can
side.
go and
What,
see from my machine. Yeah.
yeah, just before that, what I can do here is at least see the stats for the cluster. It has a very similar image or view, if you may. Memory and CPU. Obviously, I'm not going to see 100% on everything. It's just because I limited where it went from 8 to 2 to, so he's got roughly 25% of availability now of all the total resources of this cluster, right?
It's nice.
So very soon you should see this updating. In the meantime, can you see the new stats there, Dimko?
Yes, I can. I think I can. And
Okay,
I'm just waiting for them to get updated.
cool. As you can see, CPU 14%. Okay, memory 1.5. Right. So
Yes,
Dimko,
perfect.
back to you.
Yes, let me share. Let me
Oh,
know
I have a
once you
question
can
here.
see
Let's
that.
see.
Oh yeah, let's answer that meanwhile.
Nazar, Nazar. Yes, hi, hello. Hi there. Can Portainer use feature with
Hello.
blue green or a canary deployment? What do you say, Dimko?
So that's quite a nice one because all of the blue, green, and canary are more of the advanced kind of strategies for deploying the applications. And I don't think that Portainer has any of the capability to do that built in. Other than that, Kubernetes has the capability to do that to some extent. I'm completely sure that more advanced tools like Flux-CD and Argo are able to deliver blue, green, and canary within their GitOps kind of product. But what we have in mind for Portainer at the moment is not to overload people with all the advanced things that you can do. Instead, get them at least up to that basic and reliable workflow. So that's why we've trying to keep that GitOps feature as simple as possible, and we'll build it up as we go. So our expectation is that we would be able to grow the product as we grow our customers, grow in terms of educating them, in terms of showing what is blue-green deployment and why actually you would need one. So this is exactly the plan. And I'd be adding some more content on that exact topic on our blog. So keep tuned, stay tuned on that.
Cool. Thanks, Dimko. Done. Right. Oh, so you now have the stats for. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I do. So
Lovely.
I'll open that in another tab. So what's going on here is that it kind of floats and increases slowly. I actually was lucky enough to leave that application running on my local machine on my both Docker and Cube. And it grew like crazy in like half an hour it took all of my CPU, and it took, I think, like nearly 3 GB of RAM, since the nature of that application is that it leaks both CPU and it leaks both RAM, and this is exactly what I've coded here. So it leaks the RAM because it keeps adding the data into a local variable, and it each time starts the things with another thread. So I have like multiple of the threads, and they are just blocked by this thread sleep. This is C#, by the way. It's a .NET application that I have here. Okay, cool. So I think that's pretty much it. Let's go back to the namespace and see what kind of setup I can see here as a user. So what we have here is that the memory reservation is exactly what we've specified, and the memory used is exactly what we've seen on these graphs. So this is nearly 20, and another one probably is the same. And we have maximum of the reserved CPU used. And this is exactly the expectation of us.
Wow, well done. So it worked.
Yes, I think it did work, and we also can still see all of the increasing RAM. I'll just keep that tab open for a bit, and let's now go and see the logs from that application, from that CPU deployment, as I've called that. Okay, so it says it's high CPU and RAM. If you can read it, save your laptop.
I love it.
And you have like a bunch of these logs.
Save your laptop, friend.
And you can also put auto refresh and on top of that. So maybe let's filter. And as I filter the logs, it's really easy to see how that filter is all along. So I can type anything in terms of the rows. Any symbol that I'm trying to find, it'll give me the corresponding row. So which is quite nice.
You might want to show the console also, Dimko.
Oh yeah.
That's also a very cool piece.
Let's get into that application and echo that Adolfo was kind enough to let me run. Okay. So this is what this application is saying.
Lovely, yeah. And with the console, you can have direct access to that pod, and and if you need to intervene directly into the pod, you don't need to open an extra a terminal or anything, you can just, as you can see, it's Dimko probably used a very tiny OS image. That is, what are you
Yes.
using? Alpine? What are you using?
Yes, yes. I think it's
Alpine.
Alpine.
So
Let's
yeah,
have a look
yeah.
at what I have
What's
in
on
the
the Docker
Docker
file?
file. That's not specified. So by default, it's Alpine in .NET.
Yeah, it's probably Alpine. So you see,
Yeah.
he's not running on the cluster. He's running that in the pod that he just deployed. So that's another really cool feature with Portainer. Another another thing that is quite interesting that we want to mention is, as you can see um, on the menu on the left hand side, right below the word local, which is the name of the environment, two buttons: kubectl shell and kubeconfig. Right. So if for whatever reason Dimko needs to run a kubectl command on this environment, he will be able to do so. You see, he has to specify the namespace, because by default, if you run kubectl get pods,
Yes. It's
Kubernetes is going to understand that is default, and he does not have access to
yeah, yeah.
default. So as you can see, it worked in delimiting the pods that Dimko can see, and he's only going to
Indeed.
be able to run
Indeed.
exactly. There you go.
Yes, and it is actually quite valid because I'm only given the access to a particular namespace, and in default there might be a lot of things that first I shouldn't be interested in, and I should be kind of not breaking them, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
always
So
when doing these manipulation, there is a risk, right? Either
so
all
yeah.
I
So
yeah, go on.
well, I was just going to say this: the kubectl shell here is going to respect Dimko's RBAC definitions that we have in Portainer for him.
Mhm. And perhaps let's just get, I don't know, deployments. And I can see my deployments, and that's pretty much it. That's perfect.
Yeah. The other interesting thing here is that, this is something I always say, Dimko doesn't need to open, again, just like in the case of the console, he doesn't have to open a separate shell. So this makes access to his environment more secure. He can do it directly from Portainer. And we don't need to open the API port to the external world, because Portainer is acting as a proxy for him to be able to run these commands directly into the Kubernetes cluster.
Yes, indeed. And every kube provider is always cumbersome to get that into your local terminal and have that kubectl running here and double check in each cluster, etc., etc. It's not really convenient, but once you have that kind of one unified place for all the cube related manipulations, then it really strikes and it shines.
Yes. So yeah, I think we pretty much demonstrated everything, right? I mean, that was
Yeah.
the purpose of this demonstration, was exactly that: show the interaction between two profiles, and an admin profile and a dev profile, and how easy and nice it is to, via Portainer, enable the usage of resources for all these separate types of users. And again, I believe, yes, you will fall in love with it, because I fall in love with it. I think it's so cool. Very easily we can, and dynamically we can provide the proper resources to whoever is the user of the Portainer instance in this given environment. I don't know if you guys have any questions. Let me see any.
Just
No
double check that
questions,
real quick.
right? Okay, in the chat. Um,
Nothing really.
no questions. Oh, really? Oh, I'm not sad, Nazar. That shows that we did a good job, actually.
Hope so.
um, yeah, go ahead, Dimko.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it from my side as well. So I
Lovely.
think the great thing about that is that I'm really able to self-service that. So I don't need to poke you each time I need everything. I don't need to poke you each time I need to deploy. I need to change the quotas. I need to figure out what is the issue with the deployment, etc. So instead, I'm able to control first within what you've given me in the namespace, and I'm able to control what I have within one application. So I can set the limits is either in the Kubernetes manifest directly, or I can do that here in the form, as we've seen that with editing the application and seeing the limits here. So both ways work. And
Yep.
that's just awesome, as it seems to me. I also just increased the number of replicas in that Git-based deployment, and it just got replicated to Portainer. So I think that's just awesome.
In the meantime, I'm going to do something, a tiny little trick. I'm just going to do something in the background here.
Surprise me.
I'll surprise you. Just give me another second. Okay. Right. It might get to a point where you will say, hey, Adolfo, I'm happy with this. Is there a way I can make the deployment of this not only easier, but also available to other developers in the team? Okay, and I can say, yes, Dimko, just access now your custom templates here on your left-hand side menu and see.
Okay, so there is a Dimko stack here appeared magically. Probably I can share that with Neil or with Sven.
Yeah, so after
so they can deploy that.
You probably could, yes. What I did is I just copied the YAML file that was generated by Portainer, and I created a custom template. So this is also something interesting in terms of self-servicing, right? You can get a specific manifest and create a custom template from that manifest, so that self-serving of these applications becomes even easier for, let's say, users that are not actually savvy in terms of Kubernetes, or don't want to be, or don't need to be. Like, you can have a data engineer that has to set up his environment, but he doesn't really necessarily needs to know Kubernetes that well. So, just create this custom template. This might even be an image that Dimko created for a specific not so skilled user. And once it's done, he can click on create template from application, and there you go. He creates his template, and
yes, indeed.
absolutely,
and
my friend.
That's
Indeed.
It gets all of so we've just tried to create the custom template out of existing deployment that I did from the Git repo, and that's it. So I've specified the name and the description. I'm able to create the custom template, and here it is. So I can share that with my colleagues so they can just head that create application with the form. And oh no, just give me a sec. So they can do this. They can click on the custom template and give it a random name, and all of that. They would be able to create the application the same way as I did. So
yep, but just by clicking on deploy
and now it also says that
oh,
I didn't
the
specify
name
a valid name. Yeah, right.
Yeah, you put characters there. You might want to change that.
Let's do this now. So it should be cool.
There you go.
So that is quite smart.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, and as you can see, Dimko created the custom template, but it's only available for him. Obviously, as an admin, I can go and change that so a team or another set of users has access to the template that Dimko created. Well, guys, I think we showed everything. We're 4 minutes before the end of our session. If you guys have any questions, any comments, I hope you enjoyed this Portainerd event. I definitely did. I think
Same
it was
on my
really
side.
cool. It was really, really cool. And to show, that and it keeps us truthful, right? Dimko is not just you or me saying a bunch of stuff. I mean, it really showed that yes, it's a multi-user platform, and the way you can take the best out of Portainer in that sense. Right. So I think we're done. I'd like to thank everyone that came to the session. Dimko, thank you so much. It was really amazing and fun. And from my side,
Likewise.
I'd like to say bye to everyone. You have a great rest of your week. Bye bye.
Yeah, bye. Bye, everyone.